weeks for Sprint 7. So I've finally made a little bit of progress for the procedural terrain. So let me just show you where I'm at right now. Oof, that aspect ratio looks awful. Alright, there we go. So as you can see, I have this very lovely sphere, which I pretty much imported directly from the graphics class the same way that we did the terrain. So I've created a procedural mesh class and a mesh generator that's very similar to the class that we use in the graphics class to sort of generate the primitive meshes that we were to include in the engine. So far I've only got the sphere because that's pretty much what I care about right now, but I could conceivably add like the cube and everything from the graphics class, and this could possibly even work on the terrain, although I haven't tested it. And all I'm doing is just calling a function to distort some of the verts in a certain way. So that's what procedural mesh does. And it is kind of a misnomer right now because it's not actually procedural. I can't update anything at runtime, but enough deliberating. Let me just show you how this works. So it's very, very similar to terrain, except I'm calling this basic noise function, and I'm pretty much just taking in the verts, because I'm not actually going to be changing the triangles or like the actual topology of the mesh. I'm just changing the position of the verts. So I'm calling this basic noise function. I found this online a long time ago, and I'm using it for my game currently, for my independent study. So I just sort of adapted it from Unreal, like blueprint stuff, into this. But you'll see it's a pretty basic, I don't think it's even Perlin noise. All I'm doing is taking the sign of each point on the vert and then sort of just messing with it, doing some linear interpolations. I added a bunch of math tools. I added a normalize finally, and I added a vector multiplication tool for math. I kind of thought that we had that one, but turns out we don't. Okay, so without further ado, let's go over here. So I'm just going to change the minimum height value for my noise function, and then we're going to see what happens to the actual mesh. Alright, so there's some noticeable distortion, and we can mess with that value and also a frequency to sort of get this to look the way that we want. So this is my frequency value, so let's just make that 2. If this goes too high, obviously it starts looking kind of bad because you can actually see most of the verts. But yeah. So it's just proof that these aren't multiple models that I'm loading in here. So I can change the height as well. Let's bump that up to, sorry, bump this up to 1.3. These have to remain kind of low because it starts getting kind of wonky at a certain point. And like even now, it's starting to look kind of bad. But yeah, so I'm pretty much where that prospective professor was at the end of his project. So I've got a procedural mesh going on here. Yeah, so as I mentioned, it's not completely procedural, obviously, because I know I would have to mess with the graphics shader in OpenGL rather. So I've looked into doing that, and I think it's possible if I want to actually deform this at runtime. But I'm gonna have to speak to you about that and see if that's feasible within the next couple weeks here. But yeah, this is pretty much what I've got going on so far. I think it would be pretty trivial to integrate this with the terrain system as it stands. But yeah, that would require me actually having to figure out the iterator and barycentric coordinates, which I still haven't gotten to. So yeah, this is where I'm at. I need to actually have a discussion with you to see exactly where I should take this, because I could go the complete procedural mesh route, load in different meshes and be able to deform them at runtime using a graphics shader. But yeah, we'll just see if that option is feasible. All right, that is about it, and I will see you in class. Oh, and just I've made some slight improvements to the actual terrain collision because I realized I didn't actually include tiered collision completely. I only had the B sphere, but now it's working with the AABBs, so there you go. Slight improvements. All right, that's about it. I will see you in class.